Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Geek Center. My name is Corey Morset, and I'm the Right Honorable Geek Commissioner of the Movie Trivia Face-Off. And this week, we are truly honored to be joined by the hardest working man in the Movie Trivia Face-Off, Andrew the Elk Kelk. How's it going today, sir?
Hello, Corey. It is good to be here, as always, with you, the man who runs the Geektacular League here in the Movie Trivia Face-Off, the man who signs my paychecks. Still waiting on a few of those, but we'll talk about that after the show.
My assistant assures me it's in the mail.
Well, I'm looking forward to receiving it, and you fans can look forward to a great edition of Geek Center today because, of course, you are joined by me, the man who brings the entertainment, who works hard to make sure that you're having a good time. Andrew the Elk Kelk, always happy to be here talking about the Movie Trivia Face-Off, which I love and you love. Let's get into it, Corey. I cannot wait.
And we all love the Geektacular division here in the Movie Trivia Face-Off. It has been spectacular to start the year here. Mr. Elk, maybe give us your thoughts on the first few matches that we've had here in Season 2.
Well, I've got to say, so far in Season 2, I think that if I had to say one word to talk about how this season's going so far, I would say exciting. I would look at these matches that we've had so far. We've had some great contests, some high-scoring matches, some very interesting developments indeed. Now, the storylines haven't really started to ramp up, but I have a feeling that's going to change with this upcoming week. But so far, when I'm watching these competitors out there, they get in the ring, they're taking it seriously, they're doing their studying, and we're seeing some very big point totals being put up. Even in the defeats, usually someone's running away with a lot of points behind them. That says to me that the Geektacular division this season is one thing and one thing only, stacked to the gills. I know that's another thing we're going to talk about a little bit later, but I'm so excited to see what's coming down the pipe this year because we really do have some amazing dedicated competitors, and it's been a thrill to call some of these matches for you, to get them out there. I just can't wait to see what the next one's going to bring because every week I look at the schedule and say, man, we've really got some great competitors in today.
We really do. And this past week, the match that dropped just last night as we tape this was instantly a match of the year contender, I think. We had Mike the Hypeman Shea taking on Ruben the Kingslayer Cologne, number 5 in the rankings versus number 4. This match did not disappoint.
No, not at all. Both players come out very, very strong early on in this match. It's a back and forth game all the way through. A little bit of excitement with the wheel. And I mean, I love the way these two guys come into it because they're not just answering questions. You look at somebody like Mike the Hype Man Shea, obviously manages to come out with the victory in the end. But what I love about Mike Shea is he comes in, he's playing his soundboard, he's talking into the mic, he's putting on his radio announcer voice, he's having a whole lot of fun with it. And that is, I think, another wonderful thing to see in the league. Somebody who not only can compete, who not only can come up with those tough answers, get those points on the board, and plays the game well, but somebody who's in there having a good time so that you can experience that along with us, how much fun it is when you're in that ring. I like this kind of attitude. I like watching somebody who really loves being in the game, and that's definitely something I got out of Mike Shea in this match.
That's a great point, and that's one thing I think really benefited Mike Shea in that match is he was nice and relaxed all the way through. He had the lead after round 1, lost the lead in round 2, even gave up a steal. Didn't really faze him, though, and we saw that in our previous matches this season as well. Kind of the calm, cool, collected type is the one that's moving on to the next round. Maybe the David Garcia Spence match might be the only exception to that rule, but Ruben seemed a little tight. Like he was a little nervous heading into round 3 there.
Well, I mean, I certainly can see why there might have been some nerves there. He's playing very well through the match, and I don't think he wants to get down on himself. But another thing that's of note in this matchup that I thought was very interesting was just how quickly Ruben used those repeats up. As he got later on in the match, those countdowns are coming at him. He needs more time, maybe saving one of those from earlier, taking a shot at it when it's an earlier question worth 1 point, and he's a little more, quieted down, calm. He's able to have that one repeat in his back pocket if he needs it. But instead, he really ends up against that timer as he comes into round number 3. And I don't think that helped him at all with the nerves. I think that might be part of what kept him from pulling just that one more answer he needed to stay alive in this match. Like you said, calm, cool, and collected. maybe sometimes it's worth getting excited, worth getting worried about what's going on. But when you can keep that calm, keep that reserve, and keep yourself on a nice even keel, oftentimes it's going to take you all the way to the victory. That's what Mike Shea capitalized on, was that late round nervousness. And it's the middle of these matches. That wheel round, people talk about spinning the wheel and how the wheel's against you, it's for you. Let's talk about something that's not just the categories. Let's talk about how the second round is also where you're going to start to feel those nerves. You're going to miss that big question. You're going to give away a steal. You're going to run out of repeats. Any of these things that can happen to you, that's when a player who's not fully locked in, who doesn't have their game face on, can start to lose a little bit. And when those cracks start to show, if you're up against a good opponent, that's when they're going to pounce. They're going to take advantage, and that's what you don't want to let happen. That's why I think round 2 is the deciding round in most matches, even if it doesn't initially seem like it.
And that's why you don't want to use those repeats in round 2, because you always have the multiple choice to fall back on. And like you said, and I agree with you 100%, you need those repeats in your pocket heading into round 3. We saw on the 3 and the 5, had Ruben had a repeat in his pocket, he probably would have pulled those answers. Especially on the 3, he said, I know the name for both swords, both after the Reforged and before, and he was just kind of debating which one to give, and time was running out, and he gave the wrong one. Had he had a repeat there, I think we could have seen a different outcome. But if you haven't seen that match yet, I'm sorry we spoiled it, but go check out that match. It's an absolute classic. This week, Elk, we are taping 2 matches that are destined to be absolute classics. Let's talk about the first one. We have a debuting player in Nicholas Twohig, kind of becoming legendary in other leagues. You hear that name all over the place in Multiplex and in Full Metal and everywhere. Newest member of the League of Shadows, taking on our very own beloved Hillbilly Scribs. Now, I'm not going to give you a tail to tape on the Hillbilly because his numbers are not flattering. He's the only competitor in the MTFO who has never scored a point in round 2. That's all I'll say about how the Hillbilly's doing in the Geektacular division, and he has got a tough match tonight, Elk.
Well, I mean, any match can be a tough match when you're coming in, facing some losses. And as you said, Hillbilly, I mean, we love Hillbilly, but obviously he's not the top tier competitor. He's not right up there. Probably not going to make any appearances on our top 10 when we get to that a little bit later. But Hillbilly is obviously a great guy. I know him personally, and I know he's got some knowledge in there, some that you might not be aware of. Maybe he's just had some bad days. We're not quite deep enough into the league yet to look at somebody's record and say, definitively, this is a person who falls apart in a particular round, or this is a person who can't put points on the board, because you really could have just had a string of bad matches. I've mentioned it before. This isn't in Geek, but my own first match, I did pretty terribly. My second match, much better, come away with the win. When I played in that Harry Potter match against Robert Parker, for you Geek fans, that's another great classic match to check out. And not just for me, David Garcia plays incredibly well in that match. Keith Kennedy, we love to have him. He was my teammate over there in the Dollhouse, and he's very entertaining. And of course, Robert Parker with a dominating performance in that matchup. So sometimes that improvement can come, but right now you're looking at 2 players and you have no game tape versus a little bit of game tape, and the game tape is not promising. I don't know anything about Twohig coming into this except that, you know, flip a coin at worst, but at best, I'd say he's probably the spot-on, odds-on favorite for this matchup. And I hate to say that about Hillbilly, but you got to go with the numbers.
Yeah, and Hillbilly has been improving, and I should amend my earlier statement. He hasn't scored a point in round 2, but he has stolen a few, especially in that booze bout against Jimmy Derry. So good on the steals, not so good with the wheel. It hasn't really spun his way so far. But if he gets this category, you never know. Like you said, we don't know a lot about Nicholas Twohig. I know talking to some other people in the geek circles around here, and they all speak very highly of him. And he is very confident heading into the movie trivia face-off.
Well, that confidence is definitely going to be of help. As I said, confidence and calmness in a match, very, very important to you. Obviously, the strategy is important. And as you mentioned, that's somewhere where Hillbilly might have something to kind of rely on if he uses those repeats properly. I'm going to immediately go counter to myself and something I said a minute ago. Maybe this is the situation where those early round repeats can be helpful, because getting those points up, staying with or ahead of your opponent, very, very important. And Nick Twohig, I mean, he's got to look at this as a great opportunity either way. He knows he's going to be in a fun match because Hillbilly is going to do everything he can to make it fun. You've got some great people on the announcer's desk for that one, obviously. Not just myself. I know my co-host is going to be very entertaining. You guys are going to have a lot of fun with them. But I mean, Twohig, when he comes to the league, you want to beat a legend. And Hillbilly is, in some ways, a legend in this league. He's one of the original characters. He's up there on that Mount Rushmore, if it exists, with Dollface, with a couple of other people. I won't throw out any more names because that's not my call to make. But, you can beat Hillbilly, then people are going to watch that match. They're going to see you. And if you can do it in a solid fashion, or even better yet, a dominating fashion, that sets you up very well to try to crack into that top 10. Because as we mentioned, that Geek top 10 right now looking very, very stacked, very difficult, especially the top, I'd say about 6 or 7 players. These are guys who are probably not going to drop 2 losses in a row. They're going to stay up there. You need to get those wins under your belt. So that's going to be Nick's goal in this match. Come out, have some fun, look good. But you really want to take this win, and you want to look solid when you do it, because that's going to get you those matches that are going to move you up the rankings and get you in good position for a title shot. Also get you in good position to get better positions in World War Geek, because those numbers are going to be of extreme importance. We know that format and what it can do to people.
Absolutely. Now, more importantly, on the line in this match, we have the League of Shadows versus the Fraction. When this thing started out, Ruben was kind of building a faction to go up against Hillbilly's Fraction, which at the time had Tony Held was in it, Ishan Bajpai was in it, and Mark the Maniac Kamayer. Now we're down to just Mark and Hillbilly, as Ishan's MIA and Tony's left. And now we have the League of Shadows growing and picking up Nick Twohig, a pretty good free agent pickup for them. This could be the last kick at the can here for the Fraction.
Well, I mean, obviously the League of Shadows, if they're going to pick up Twohig, that means, one, there's some talk out there. They've heard some good things about him. So, I mean, I think that's a solid move. Get somebody in there that you think can do some damage, especially someone unknown who they can't prepare for if you're going up against a faction that you're fighting off against. And as far as the Fraction, well, I mean, they're living up to their name. They're down to a sum of their former parts. But I got to be honest with you. If I'm looking at the names that are left over right now, Mark Kamayer, very, very strong competitor. Love watching him on screen. He does a great deal here in the movie Trivia Face Off, and he's a lot of fun, but very, very solid competitor. And Hillbilly, as I mentioned, we don't necessarily know that he's not a better competitor than the numbers have shown so far. And he is one of those people who you want in that match. He's going to make sure that it's entertaining. I think they've got maybe the 2 strongest members left over, and really, that's what you're going to need, because you're fighting. If the League of Shadows has really come at you this much, you've been breaking apart the way the Fraction has, I think you want to get that solid base back behind you. If Hillbilly can come away with the win today, that's the victory for him and for the Fraction. They can make themselves stronger. They can stand up and say, hey, we're still here. We never went anywhere. We're the best of the rest. We might be what's left over, but we are not the ones who needed to go. We are the ones who are here to stay and do some damage in this league. And a solid win on their side could do something for them. Maybe then they could start to look at recruiting somebody new in, fighting back against the League of Shadows. I don't know if this is over, but for the Fraction, it really is crunch time. They're down to that final chance. They need to get this win if they want to stand up and say, hey, the Fraction is a force to be reckoned with in this league, because otherwise we're going to have to go to those records. And as mentioned, it's not going to be something you can hold up with just one of your 2 members putting up those wins.
That's exactly right. Now, because we love you all, geek fans, so much here at the Movie Trivia Face Off, we're giving you 2 matches this week. We're taping one on Sunday featuring the number 4 ranked competitor in the MTFO, Joe Hot Fuzz Farrelly, taking on Malcolm the Crazy Kiwi Goldie Lay, who is just a little bit outside of the top 10. But Elk, we're going to take a look now real quick at their tail of the tape. And there we have it there, Joe Hot Fuzz Farrelly, 2-1 with 2 knockouts. His round 1 accuracy, 63%. Round 2, he's batting 70%. Interesting stat on Joe, he's the only competitor in the MTFO who has a knockout, a technical knockout, and has been knocked out himself. When you're looking at Malcolm the Crazy Kiwi Lay, he's 1-1 with 1 knockout. Round 1, under 500, 45%. Round 2, back up to 60%. He was TKO'd by Jim Green, but then he turned around and TKO'd Keith Kennedy in his last match. Elk, looking at these numbers, what jumps out at you?
I mean, the first thing has to be what you already mentioned, Joe Farrelly, a knockout, a technical knockout, and 1 KO against. Now, I know that you say to yourself that KO against him really kind of changes the way that you perceive this, but that's only until you remember who he was facing when that happened. What was the Titan, the person who could bring down somebody who's performing so well, who's got 2 big wins against 2 other competitors? Well, It's Robert Parker. Of course, it's Robert Parker. This is a man who ran over everybody. I think that takes away a little bit from the impact of that KO. And that means that what you're left with is you're left with a player very, very impressive. He's got 2 big victories, both are knockouts of his opponent. And the only loss he's faced is against a guy who's now a early round draft pick in the Schmodown. Got to think that he's going to feel confident coming into this. But he could be in a very dangerous situation. Yes, his opponent on the other side, I'm looking at that 45, that 60%. Across the board, Hot Fuzz is looking better than Malcolm, but Malcolm's only had 2 matches so far, and this is his opportunity. You want to watch out for those hungry players, because what does a win give Malcolm here? If you think Joe is going to perform well, then a win for Malcolm not only pulls his points total up, but you said he's just outside of that top 10. And if you want to compete in this Geek League, the way it looks right now, you got to be in that top 10. You've got to be fighting for that title every single match. So a win for Malcolm here is a giant win, because it probably pulls him up, if not into the top 10, very close. Almost certainly it would, I would think, with a win over Joe. And Joe, he's just looking to continue the trend so far. He wants to put that next win on the board. And if he can put up another knockout, that's also a statement for him, because then he can say, I only lost 1 match, and it was to Robert Parker. Everybody else I've played, you set him up, I take him down.
No, that's a very good point. And let's just check out the wheel that we have going on here for this match. This is the wheel we're going to see for Farrelly versus Lay. They each get, of course, their choice outside of the 8 fandoms. Malcolm opting to go with weapons, technology, and magical objects. And he says he did that for strategic reasons when it came to steals. Whereas Joe Farrelly going with Back to the Future, the first time we've seen Back to the Future on the wheel in Season 2. Just kind of looking at the wheel, Elk, do you think it favors any one player?
I mean, obviously, I think in Geek, it's a little bit harder for you to get something on that wheel that's really going to be troublesome to your opponent. I know there's going to be some people who are really deeply into a couple of these categories. There's some giant Star Wars fans out there. There's some giant DCEU fans out there. I think that one's one people look over sometimes. Wizarding World can be the same way. These are categories where you can dominate, because the questions get so specific and so very deep cut later in the match, especially that third round where it's really important you rack up those points. Those totals are getting higher. And I mean, I think overall this doesn't favor one person over the other, unless that strategy plays out well. Huge respect to Joe for putting Back to the Future on that wheel. I'm a giant fan of the series, obviously. I'm exactly of the right kind of age. I grew up watching this. Michael J. Fox was a hero. You know, Huey Lewis and the News played all over the living room while you're watching those films. And I love to see it on there. And if he feels like he's strong, that could be a category where those deeper cut questions are a little bit harder. Sure, you know a few things about it, but what year did they go to? What did the sign say in this one scene? You know, there's going to be some real deep cuts. It's not all just going to be Enchantment Under the Sea in that category. So it could be good for him if he's against his opponent. And the strategy on weapons, tech, and magical objects, I'm not sure what he means by strategy. If he thinks he's particularly strong at remembering, maybe he associates with those sorts of things, that could be good. I think maybe what he's saying, what I would be saying if I had to pick this category out, is weapons, tech, and magical objects is one of those big, broad categories. And maybe the purpose that he's saying is he wants to get those steals. What he means is nobody really does know the answers to these questions across all these movies. So by broadening it, you're putting up more of a chance for your opponent to miss, which in turn, of course, gives you that chance to steal back. And if it works out that way, I mean, what do you need out of steals? You get two misses, even on a multiple choice, and you pick them up from your opponent. That's a 4-point swing. We've seen so many matches end at 2-3 points over your opponent. That 4-point swing can take you all the way there. So that could also be a good strategy, unless his opponent manages to get those questions on a second spin and just doesn't give him the steal chances, because then I think you're throwing the slice away. And you might want to pick something that's much more narrow, but that you know if you get it, you can absolutely dominate. So interesting choice. I don't necessarily dislike it, and I'm truly looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
And you hit the nail right on the head. Malcolm's reasoning was he feels confident enough in the 8 main categories that he thought he'd put something a little more broad on there and hopefully trip up Joe. So that was the thinking going in. And I like that these players are thinking strategically now that they could place a category like that on the wheel.
Yeah, and at this level of competition, we've said it, it's essential. You're going to be playing against people who know what they're doing, players who have put up mid-20s points in a match, and I'm talking pretty consistently. So against a player like that, it's not always going to be just about, I want to play my best game. It is, what bad categories can I get out there for them? How can I rattle them? When can I use those challenges? And when is it too early to use those challenges? I know Bateman in the Schmodown, big proponent of the strategy, and he's always said that the challenges should be used if you feel like you can get the point, but that's the key part of it. If you use that repeat because you think maybe you're going to get the point, you could be throwing it away when you need it later. If you know you're close, if you know you've got 3 seconds left on the countdown and that answer is right on the tip of your tongue, you absolutely have to go for the points. Otherwise, you want to hold back, make sure that you have a couple left over, especially essential if you're in those close games at the end. You want to have at least one repeat remaining for your 3 or your 5. When you get to those, you know they're going to be deep cut questions. You know you need that time to think. And I mean, honestly, just put 2 repeats on the board on a 5-pointer with some of the players we've got in this league. That extra 30 seconds could be more than enough. And 5 points, that'll win you a match.
You're absolutely right. Now, real quick, let's take a look at the Hillbilly Twohig wheel. Unfortunately for Hillbilly, Wizarding World is on there. Also, unfortunately, because this document was done up before we instituted the you can pick a slice rule in the MTFO, the writing room picked the slices for this one. So we have the main 8, of course, and then Heroes and Villains and Weapons, Tech, and Magical Objects again as the electives on this wheel. Tough wheel for Hillbilly, I think. Like I said, Wizarding World, not a strength. Middle Earth, not a strength. Heroes and Villains are maybe a little too broad. Same with Weapons, Tech, and Magical Objects. I think he's most comfortable in a Star Wars, so he'll maybe be looking at that slice if he can get it.
Yeah, this is definitely one where I think picking a wheel slice could have helped him, even perhaps if it is something like we just saw Joe pick with Back to the Future, because you got to think about it. There's 3 movies in that franchise. Even if you don't know, if you want to kind of get a category that you can dominate, something that only has 3 or 4 movies, like a Back to the Future or an Indiana Jones, you can put in the studying pretty quickly. You can go over those movies a couple times, reread the IMDb. And I think that if Hillbilly had been given the choice, I think one of those slices may have ended up on the wheel. I think that would be a very solid choice for him, because when you're a player who can't guarantee that you're going to come away with 7 points in round 1, and you're usually going to be able to pull 5 or 6 minimum out of round number 2, then you want that category on the wheel that you can spin, that you can dominate, that you can get 5 out of 5 on a good day and take all the points. I mean, it's going to be tough. And if it's me, there's only probably a couple categories on that wheel that I think you want to spin away from for sure. Everything else, it really is just you spin the wheel and whatever it lands on, you say to yourself, am I above 80% in this? And if not, you got to spin it again.
Yeah, exactly. And for Nicholas Twohig, I think he's comfortable in just about everything from what I've heard. Not looking good for the Hillbilly. Real quick, we kind of broke down the matchups. When it comes to Nicholas Twohig and Hillbilly Scribs, tough one to pick, Elk, but who do you like in this one?
I mean, there's no game tape whatsoever on Twohig. For all I know, people talk. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Maybe he's not a top tier competitor. Maybe this is a breakout day. Maybe, Hillbilly just gets lucky and he hits those correct categories, manages to get those little bits of knowledge that have floated to the top of his brain already, because we know that anybody can win. But much as I love the guy and I'm looking so forward to seeing him on screen no matter what happens, I got to go against Hillbilly, and I got to say, I think you got losses on your record and nothing but, and you're playing up against a new guy. Give the newbie the shot. He's not shown you anything to make you doubt it yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. Unfortunately, I love Hillbilly. He's a legend. He'll always be here to compete and to call matches and, of course, do the Hillbilly Hollers and everything else. Fantastic dude, raising a ton of money for St. Baldrick's Foundation. Check out that charity match if you haven't done it yet. Tremendous match. Over 300 views now. Let's get that thing as our #1 viewed video. It's got to eclipse 900 to do that. So keep clicking on those on the match and check it out.
And if you do watch that match, folks, and you are thinking to yourself, I would love to donate, but I can't afford to pay out $20 or $30 or $40 or $50. I can't afford to put in the amount of money that it would cost because I need to pay a bill. I need to get a meal. Just think about it. Take a moment to yourself. And if you enjoy the match, which I'm sure you will, great competitors, we had our great guest hosts, think about putting in $1, 50 cents, 25 cents. I know that sounds ridiculous, but every little bit that we add up helps. And when you're talking about a cause like this one, when you're talking about helping kids who have cancer, I mean, I can't think of anything better. So if you do watch that match, and we highly recommend it, and you do enjoy that match, please, 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 even if it's a tiny amount, think about putting in that donation, because we want to do everything we can to help out, make it bigger and better. And we do well this year, I guarantee you it'll be back next year and the year after that. As long as the face-off is around, we'll be fighting for this cause. So I do highly urge, get those donations in, please. We love you guys, and we're going to keep putting out that entertainment, but help us out with this one.
Absolutely right. But we're both picking against Hillbilly, even though he did such great work in the charity match. We're going Nick Twohig. Let's look at the second match, Joe Farrelly versus Malcolm Lay. Looking at the matchup and everything, it kind of leans towards Joe Farrelly, but Malcolm Lay really confident coming into this one. Who do you like, Elk?
Well, I mean, it's cut and dry if you're just looking at it straight away. You go by the numbers, what we do have on the tail of the tape, percentages are all higher on one side of the board. You go by the records, more wins on the one side of the board. You go by the decisiveness of those victories. What is that that dominating side looking like with Joe Farrelly? Again, knockout of both of his opponents. Only one loss to a guy who jumped up to the Schmodown and who is widely recognized as one of the greats in Geektacular and the fan leagues. I've heard people talk about Robert Parker on the level of a Kevin Smets. You know, it's the exact same kind of, he's the guy you got to watch out for when he moves up. So you got to have a lot of confidence in Joe. That being said, I already mentioned Malcolm, super hungry. This victory could mean the world to him. I'm going to go against the grain on these numbers, and I'm going to say I think that Malcolm has the hunger. He has the drive to pull this out, and he's going to be more motivated. That may give him the edge, but I think it's going to be a close one and a great match either way.
I agree totally. It's going to be a close one. We're not going to get a TKO in this match, I don't think. Malcolm has really been improving and has been impressive in how he's been improving. And he's been studying, he's been working. He really is excited about World War Geek. He's putting in the time. And I'm not shocked that you picked Malcolm. I think he's got a real chance here. But I am going to side on the side of numbers. I'm going to pick Joe Farrelly. Also impressive in his two knockouts and against Robert Parker. God bless him, he tried his best, but like you said, that's a juggernaut that's about to make a dent in the movie Trivia Schmodown. This is going to be a really good match. I think a lot of people aren't predicting it to be, but Malcolm Lay, an improving player, maybe just comes up a bit short against Joe Farrelly, and that's my prediction. All right, Elk, let's take you now to the brand new top 10. And here we go. Mike, the Hype Man Shea is the new number one in the Geektacular division after beating Ruben the Kingslayer Cologne. David the Spaniard Garcia drops to number 2. Thomas the Warhawk Scully at 3. Joe Hot Fuzz Farrelly still at number 4. You look at Ruben the Kingslayer, drops all the way down to 6. And also making his debut in the top 10 this week, Chris the Lone Wolf Diaz, after a very impressive knockout of Garth the Viking. Didn't even need his 5th question in round 2 of that match. That was enough to move him into the top 10. Any standouts here for you, Mr. Elk?
I mean, I'm loving a lot of this top 10. I said it at the top of the show. I think this Geek League is stacked right now. I think you look at that top 5 up there, maybe even all the way down to, I'd extend it maybe all the way to the top 8. Those are all competitors who, from what we've seen, are deep knowledge guys. They're hardworking. They are cut above, and I legitimately think that we have an incredible amount of competition going on here. So I love that. I'm looking at Thomas Scully. That's a name. Every time it comes up, people are afraid. People say Scully is one of those players. He's going to take you down, and you have to play your best to beat him. David obviously has been an incredible player against some people. He's obviously deserving of his rank. I'll say that because we're not on the air right now, and in real life, David's all right, I guess. I am happy, however, to see him drop out of number 1. I think well-deserved for the Hype Man. I love a guy with a radio voice, so good to have him up there. Dave the Dragon Lees, we were on another podcast with Spence, and we were talking about that. And I did actually mention Dave Lees. One of his matches earlier on in the league is one of my favorites, kind of an underrated match. Him versus the Terror was incredible. I know he's a dangerous, dangerous player, but really, it's 21 and pick 'em with this. There's no name on this top 10 that you could take out, especially after that fun little bit of domination from Chris Diaz. Like, very, very impressed. Was not expecting that at all. I think there's maybe one name, maybe 2 names, if you stretch, that you could take out of this and say they don't deserve to be in that top 10. But I don't even think that's true. I think you're reaching if you said this is this is going to be a fun season. I look forward to seeing this move around the same way that Ruben has fallen out with that one big loss. And I think we're going to see that shuffling. I think we're going to see people dropping in and out of the top 5. I think we're going to see a lot of the same names showing up. Maybe somebody breaks in by mid-year, but by the middle of the year, I honestly think we're going to have maybe the same 5 people trading off up on top. And man, I can imagine they are going to be bloodthirsty when they get in their matches, when they've lost a match to so-and-so 2 below them, where they can pull that 1 point ahead. And as the title opens up as well, everybody on this hungry for that belt. I'm just excited. That's all I can say.
It's going to be fantastic. Now, the next few weeks coming up here, we're going to have some rookies. Sinister Alec Miller taking on Devontae Hellhound King. That's going to be next week's match. After that, we have Jay the Arsonist Burns is coming back to the NTFO, and I'm very happy to see him back. Out of the meat cooler, I'm hoping in this one. He's taking on a rookie, Ethan Librarian. March 7th and 8th, we're filming a second match that week. We got Hunter Chambliss is taking on Nick Big Sal Carley. And there's 2 players, I think, they haven't won yet, but both of them, I think, have a lot of knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to that matchup. But looking at the upcoming matchups, it really comes down to March 21st. That's when we're going to get number 2 versus number 8, Thomas Scully versus Dave the Dragon Lees. When I booked this match, I was giddy because it's going to blow the roof off the joint, I think.
Oh, no doubt whatsoever. I mean, I got to give a quick shout out to my boy, Big Sal, the deli sandwich. You know, I'm a big booster for him. Had a match against him, managed to get that win, so I'm going to hold on to that one. But I love the guy. Great to see him coming back. Great to see a lot of these names coming in. And this will be a little bit different from the beginning of the year. We've had some people early on, they're fighting for those top spots. They're in that top 10. Now we're going to see some players who have a chance to maybe make their way in, to break in, to improve those records and get a little bit closer and give us a good reason to book them coming into the middle and the latter half of the year. So some super, super fun matches coming up. Definitely going to be nice to have a couple where there's no real title pressure on. For the players, I know it's still going to be tough, but there's that. And man, you know how to bury the lead, because that last match, Thomas Scully, Dave the Dragon Lees, it's almost like I knew you were going to say that, because I was just talking about both these players. Scully, everybody knows what he can do. Always afraid. You say the name Thomas Scully, and people's initial reaction in that Discord server is like, okay, great, I'll be happy to lose to him. That's the first thing out of their mouth. Dave the Dragon Lees, nothing but impressed all the way through with Dave and his performance. Just going to be a knockdown drag out. I honestly think that one, we could be talking about that one for a while. That one could come up, and I think a few weeks afterwards, we're still going to be saying, can you imagine what happened in that match? Can you believe what happened in that match? I think that one has real potential. That could even face all the way up to a match of the year candidate. And like I said, when you're this stacked up on top, it's weird. The top 10, usually that's where you want to be. But right now, you kind of want to be in that top 5. You really want to be close and competing for this. So both these players not going to want to put up a loss. So excited. Can't wait for that one.
Well, Elk, judging by how dark your shot is getting, it must be getting late. So I guess we're running out of time.
I do apologize. I can get some light on in here if you need
okay.
it. We're going to drop out.
We're going to wrap it up here real quick. Andrew, where can the people find you on social media?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can always find me, obviously, on the YouTube channel for the Movie Trivia Face-Off. Please come on in, check that out, see if you like it. And if you do like the Movie Trivia Face-Off, you'll love the Schmodown. I am online at Kelk Andrew on Twitter. That is about the extent of my social media, and it's usually going to be about the Movie Trivia Face-Off. But hey, every now and then I get bored. I throw out some weird stuff on there. So please come on, check me out, and it's been a thrill to be here.
And it's been a thrill to have you here, sir. Andrew the Elk Kelk, the voice of the Movie Trivia Face-Off and the self-proclaimed hardest working man in the Face-Off, joining us this week. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us as well. And don't forget to check us out next week on Geek Center.